I showed how to send static content like HTML and CSS files to a web page using the Express framework for Node. In this lesson, I'd like to introduce Embedded JavaScript, or EJS for short, as a way of making HTML pages that contain dynamic or changing content. So why do we want dynamic content? Well, imagine visiting a banking website. When you see your list of transactions, the header and footer of that HTML page stays the same for every single customer, but the middle of the page is unique based on transactions that have happened to your individual account. In order to display a similar but customized web page to every customer, the web programmer has to set up a template file. And this is how that works. So imagine that you have Node running over here on your web server, and you also have EJS. What Node can do is create an HTML page and then send it over to the end user. With EJS, we can do things like grab some records from a database and then inject them into the HTML page before we send it over to the client. Now, this idea of using a template file to include dynamic content in it is not new. For example, here I have Microsoft Word, and if I go File, New from Template, we see that we can create things like a resume or a calendar, and these are template files just like we're going to use using EJS in just a moment. The idea, or the big picture here, being that a template file is something that contains 90% of what you usually want on a page over and over again, and then you're going to insert some dynamic parts that relate to the individual problem that you're dealing with. Okay, so let's get started with an example. First, I'm going to open up Visual Studio Code, and then I'm going to open up a blank folder that I've recently created. And I want to set this up for an Express application. So I went to Terminal, opened up a new Terminal window, and I'm going to do npm init to set things up. I'm going to take all the defaults this particular time, and then I'm going to do npm install Express. All right, now I'm going to give myself a setup page here, index.js, and then I'm going to set this up as a standard Express application. I'll say let Express equal require Express, and then as my typing gets better, I'm going to create an instance of that. And then I'm going to set up a default route here, app.get / request response. And what I did in a previous video is I created a static HTML file, and I'm going to do that again. I'm going to include an additional library or module at the top here. So I'll say let path equal require path. So we won't necessarily be using this for EJS, but just to demonstrate some things. And I can use the following line of code to include an HTML page. And let me go ahead and steal an HTML page that I used in another video, and I'm going to click out here in the open space and say index.html. So I'm creating a new file, dropping that in. So I've got some content there to display on my page. Save, and then I'll do app.listen on port 3000. And let's just make sure this works. So I'll say node index.js, bring over a new browser, localhost port 3000. There we go. The index page came up nicely. Okay, so what I was talking about before was the fact that there's nothing dynamic in here. So this particular page displays the same no matter how many times you visit it. But oftentimes we need to inject some dynamic content in there, and that is where EJS comes in. So let's go ahead and get this thing set up for using EJS. One of the first things that I need to do is add a command at the top here that says app.set view engine EJS. Now, EJS stands for Embedded JavaScript, and the idea is that we can have a page like this and embed programming code in here that will execute and then render some small tidbits, usually of HTML, into this page prior to this page getting sent to the client that has requested it. Now, EJS is just one of a number of templating languages that can have dynamic content included in them and be used in association with Express. Another example of this would be Jade, which is also called Pug. But we're going to use EJS today. I have not imported the module for it yet, so in addition to saying to use it, I have to import it. So I'll say npm install EJS, and then the libraries will be included in the node modules folder. And whenever you use this, it's expected that there is going to be a folder in here called views. And this is where the equivalent of your HTML files will go in the future. So I'm going to then, within that folder, create something called index.ejs. And let me go ahead and steal my HTML content from over here. And I will paste it into here. And I don't want to do a full form this time. I'll kind of just start from scratch. And maybe I'll just say hello world to get started. So I'll hit save, and then over here in my index.js, instead of sending a file that's a static file, we do a different command, which is response.render, and then we reference the file that's included in the views folder. So I could do this like this, index.ejs, and that would be okay. But it's not necessary. It's understood if you are using a view engine and you say render, that it's just going to look for the prefix of the file. So the extension is optional, and so I'm not going to use it. I'm going to save this page, and then I'm going to restart my application, node index.js. Let's go find that HTML page again. Here it is. I'm going to reload this. Yay, I got the thing that I wanted. Okay, at this point, if you're following along, you're going, well, that wasn't very interesting. I thought you were going to show me how to make some dynamic content. All right, let's learn how to make dynamic content. So if you are using an EJS page, one of the things you can do anywhere is you can put these symbols here, less than %, and then % that, and then anything in here can be just regular JavaScript. So for example, I could say let string first name equals, and then have that be my name. And I could write functions in here. I could do anything I wanted, but in this case, I'll just set a single variable. The other thing, other than having these symbols to start and end where JavaScript is going to execute, the other thing that we can do is use this other symbol, and it is less than %equal, and this is for displaying variables out to a page. So I can do less than %equals s first name, and that is going to embed the value of that variable right on the page. So let me go ahead and hit save here. Now, whenever you do an update to the EJS page, not the place where everything goes through, the index.js, but whenever you update your view file, your index.ejs or other EJS files, you don't have to restart the server. So I'll come back out here and I'll reload it. There we go. My variable showed up on the page. All right, let's do something a little bit more complicated now. Instead of using a single variable, let's go ahead. Here, I'll just leave that on the page. Put a couple line breaks here. let's go ahead and add in an array. So I'm going to create an array, and I'll say let, and we'll talk about donuts, an array of donuts equal to, and I'll mention a few varieties of donuts. Plain, raised, chocolate, and maybe I'll do filled. Awesome. All right, and let me just again verify that this works. I'm going to do some additional stuff here. I'll do console.log, and so instead of printing it out to the page, I'm just going to put it out to the terminal for now, just to make sure everything's working right. And I'll hit save again, and then I'm going to reload my page, and as I reload it, I should see the array contents show up in my terminal window. So I reload it, and there it is. So I was able to set a variable and then print it out to the terminal. Now, when you're doing local development, you can see this show up right here. If you're doing, if you have this application deployed on a server somewhere, then you need to have some place to save your logging statements, because otherwise you can't see them because they're happening on a completely different computer than the one you're viewing it from. Okay, now that I know that I have this content there, I'm gonna just get rid of that statement. I don't need it anymore. I know it's working. All right, now let's do something that's a little fun, which is I'm going to loop through these contents to display them on my web page. So this is how I would do that. I would set up a for loop, let I count, for let I count equals 0, while I count is less than a donuts.length, and then I count plus plus. So I'm planning to loop through this, and I put my little curly brace there. Okay, so here's something a little interesting about working with a page like this in EJS, is that I have to alternately go back and forth between JavaScript and HTML. So at this point, I'm going to jump out of my JavaScript, and then I'm going to pick up with my JavaScript again right here, and then right here in the middle, this is stuff that gets repeated. So if I said hello, it would technically write this out on the HTML page over and over again, and this is not JavaScript. This is just something that gets, this is HTML that gets repeated because it's within a loop. Okay, but I actually don't want to print plain text here. What I really want is I want the donuts printed out to the screen in HTML. So I'm going to do % less than % equal, because I want to display something out to the page, and I'll say a donuts, and then select the right index, which is going to be I count, and it'll keep on counting up and up. And then I'll put a line break there, and maybe I'll prefix it with a hyphen just to make the output look nice. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and hit save. It did a little reformatting here, which I don't particularly like. Usually I like my code formatters, but not in that case. At any rate, I'm going to come back out here, and I'm going to hit reload, and there it is. So this is pretty awesome. I was able to create an array of information, and then I was able to loop through that array, and then I was able to print it out to the screen. And let me go ahead and fix the formatting again so it looks more like what I want it to look like. So that's what I'm thinking about. Okay, fantastic. Let's just go ahead and demonstrate something. I'm going to come out here to my web browser, and notice that even though there's a lot of JavaScript in this page, if I right click on here and I do view page source, notice that there's just HTML that's been sent to the web browser. So when you're using Node and Express and EJS, all of the JavaScript gets executed on the server, and the only thing that gets sent back to the web browser is something equivalent to just a regular plain old HTML page. And so that's why we see this in the page source. Okay, so this is pretty good, but what if we wanted to send information to our page and not just generate variables and stuff within our EJS page. And so let's go ahead and watch how that would work. First off, I'm just going to get rid of this. In fact, maybe I'll just get rid of everything on here. Okay, so now we just have a blank HTML page to start off with. All right, what I would like to do is, instead of generating my variables here, I would like to generate them somewhere else. So I'm back out here on my main application page, my index.js, and the convention for how we usually do things is that for each route that we have, so in this case this is my default route, but I might have like a /help, a /about, a /show donuts. So every route represents in essence a different page or a different URL that the end user is typing in from their web browser. Our convention is usually for each thing that they type in, we'll do something like a database call will typically happen right here, where we will return an array of variables and then we pass them in to the EJS page where they can be subsequently displayed. So the magic as it relates to sending data to one of these pages is we have to create an object. So here's one way that we might do that. I'll say let object person equal, and I'll say first name, and I'll put mine there. And I could do a comma separated list now for anything else that I wanted to send in. So this is just optional. I'm not actually going to use this, but I could do this, and I could do this endlessly. Okay, so what I've created is an object without a constructor or anything like that. It's just an alternate syntax for doing this. Okay, so here's what I can do. I can take this object that's been created here, and I can pass it to the page. And think of this thing as a suitcase. It can hold any number of things. It can hold attributes that are just strings. It can hold attributes that themselves reference other objects. It can hold attributes that hold variables of type array. So you could stuff this single variable with all kinds of data to your heart's content. But the key idea, though, is you have to just boil it down to one single variable of type object that you're going to pass in to your EJS page. And once it's been passed in, this variable name in essence disappears, the name of the object, and you can only reference the things that are the attributes within it. Okay, so first name is one of those things that is going to be visible in the EJS page as part of this object. All right, so let's watch this happen. So I'm going to come over to here, and I'm going to say the person's first name is, and I'm going to do percent equals, and what's the attribute on the previous page? I'm going to go back and check. It's first name. So I'm just going to grab that and put it right there. Save. All right, now I'm going to go ahead and reload my page. I reload it. Uh-oh, I've made a mistake. Let's see, what did I do wrong? Okay, I figured out what I did wrong. Whenever you create an alteration to your application, your index.js page, you have to stop and restart your server. So the changes here don't require a server restart, but the changes here do require that. So I have done Control-C to stop my server, node index.js to restart it. Let's go back out to my web page and I restart. Whew, now everything works right. Okay, fantastic. I'm able to see this variable that's been passed in. Again, I can do view source and I see just HTML here. Okay, so again, at a high level, the idea is if I need to display something in a page like this, typically I'm going to be pulling something from a database, creating variables, and then packing them all into a single object that's going to get passed to my EJS page, and we don't actually reference necessarily the name of that object anymore. we can just look at the attribute names. All right, knowing this, then in future lessons, I can show you how to create a database call, return a list of results from a database, and then pass them in to your EJS page. Okay, and just one other little thing that I could show you is, although I created this object separately from where I pass it in, I could just grab it like that and pass it in that way. So if I do this, oopsie daisies, and if I stop that, oops, I better save it first. Save, restart. This is going to work the same way. I'm going to have these attributes available to me. So I'm going to come back out to here, hit reload. Still works exactly as before. Okay, so with all of this, we're now ready to get started with interacting with a database table and displaying things in an EJS page.